Inspiration and ideas are famously funny things of nebulous origin. Where do good ideas come from? What particular piece of brain chemistry conjures them? What makes one person capable of dreaming up something weird, creative, new, or fabulous, while I can't decide whether to have a cup of tea or not? If you want to know more about where ideas come from, you're in for a bumpy ride. There's a lot of reading out there, offering insights into the many, many ways and theories in which ideas are formed. The reading out there is thought-provoking, insightful, and sometimes spectacularly unhelpful. This is from Indy Young, a qualitative data scientist who published an essay titled "Where Do Ideas Come From?" on Medium in 2018. Quote, "So when you're in front of the whiteboard explaining your mental roadblock to somebody, when you're thinking of nothing in the shower, when you're daydreaming about something else, these are the times when your brain is able to pull concepts together that you otherwise wouldn't have associated. If you relax your brain, then things will pop out. The one drawback to this cognitive behavior is that your brain can only forge new ideas from things that exist within your mind already. And hence, the problem with creating products and services arises. Teams only think of solutions that are couched in concepts already familiar to them." End quote. Okay, so that's a problem to solve. Here's a solution. This is from a TED Talk given by Stephen Johnson, a best-selling author of 13 books on the history of health, medicine and technology in 2010. The talk is titled "Where Good Ideas Come From." He's talking here about collaborative work environments, quote, and something about that environment, and I've started calling it the liquid network, where you have lots of different ideas that are together, different backgrounds, different interests, jostling with each other, bouncing off each other. That environment is, in fact, the environment that leads to innovation. End quote. Two smart perspectives there, logical and insightful, and neither of which apply to my guest today, which tells us something about the impossibility of truly defining where ideas come from. My guest today is not encumbered by the notion that our brains can only forge new ideas from things that exist in them already. My guest today is not part of a liquid network. My guest today is a solo developer who makes games based on ideas you've probably not seen elsewhere. My guest today has made one of the highest rated games of 2025. Hi, I'm Andrew. Welcome to Dialogue Tree. This is episode 25. Show, Don't Tell. Nama Takahashi on ElecHead and the design of new ideas. Nama Takahashi is a game developer from Japan. To date, they have made a few games, but really came to prominence with the release of ElecHead. Published in 2021 on PC and 2022 on consoles, it's a puzzle platformer, with emphasis on the puzzle, where you play Elec, a little robot with a detachable head. When Elec touches walls, floors, platforms, switches and more, they make electricity run through those objects, activating them. Elec can detach and throw their head to trigger things remotely. If they don't get their head back in 10 seconds, Elec blows up. You can use these two abilities in tandem to solve about 4 to 5 hours worth of wordless puzzles. It's an excellent game, and I loved it. Smart, fun, unique, and it was recognised as such, being the runner-up in Edge's PC Game of the Year Awards in 2021, and being nominated in the Best Debut category in the Game Developers Choice Awards in 2022.
ずっとゲームを遊んでましたね。将来のことについて考えたときに、正直何しようかなってずっと迷って。
The voice you can hear is Nama, from an interview they gave on the YouTube channel Asobudev around the time of the release of ElecHead. It's a great interview that I recommend you watch. Nama talks freely and openly about his game development journey, how they got started, their influences, making games for competitions, and how those experiences push them forward. Nama is extremely chill. There is no artificially dramatic narrative imposed onto their story. They simply exude the air of someone who loves making games. Someone who is motivated by the possibilities of the medium. Someone who wants to keep making something new. That new thing is OO. If you're Googling, that's 3 O's with an umlaut on the first. Released on Steam for PC on August 8th, 2025, it's another puzzle platformer, with emphasis on the puzzle. The press release does a pretty good job in describing this game. In OO, you play as a bomb-wielding caterpillar, progressing through stages by cleverly using your body, which is made of bombs. The controls are extremely simple. Move, drop a bomb, detonate. Use bomb blasts to destroy walls, create new platforms, or combine multiple bombs in clever ways. Depending on how you use bombs, you can break through seemingly impossible obstacles. In this game, knowledge matters. Even if you hit a dead end, the discoveries and knowledge you've gained so far may help you take a step back, observe the map, and realise that a new path was there all along. Bombs can be detonated at any time, so precision platforming is not required. It's all about creativity and observation. There's a lot of words in there that I think will make the ears prick up on a certain type of gamer, which also happens to be quite a wide range of gamers. Simple gameplay with a depth of design, a world where creative exploration is essential to progress. I've played through it, and I think it's brilliant. But you don't need to take my word for it. It currently sits at overwhelmingly positive from over 2,500 reviews on Steam, and has been praised by notable developers such as Jan Willem Nijman, who worked on Discroom and Minute, and Jeppe Carlsen, the lead game designer of Limbo, Inside and Cocoon. My favourite review, however, is this, from the Steam user TechServe. Quote, "This feels like the missing 51st game from UFO 50 if it were made by the creator of Animalwell." End quote. Thank you, TechServe. Please consider a career in games journalism. These games, and their creator, being so fresh and interesting, prompted me to reach out to Nama, to ask them about their history with gaming, and their approach to game and puzzle design. They were kind enough to say yes. I sent over too many questions. They sent back some wonderful, detailed and insightful answers. Now, Nama wasn't comfortable recording audio for his responses, but he kindly provided a translation and was happy to have his answers read on the show. So, to help out today, we have David Howe, an animation editor, filmmaker, voice actor and host of the Super Switchhead podcast. An interview with a difference, fitting for such a unique developer. But first, let's talk to David.
I'm David Howe. I'm one of the hosts of the Nintendo podcast, Super Switchheads. I'm a filmmaker. I've made a few feature films, and I currently work as an animator, working on video game adaptations such as the Castlevania series and Tomb Raider, Legend of Lara Croft. And I was the transcription reader for this episode for Nama.
David has covered it all pretty well there, but I'd still like to elaborate on a couple of things. I've been listening to his show, Super Switchheads, for, I'm not actually sure how long. A couple of years. A couple of 100 episodes at least. I love it, and not just because it's a Nintendo show. Because it's not just a Nintendo show. It covers a broad range of subjects from across the world of gaming, and each week, you never know what you're going to get. That's been a big influence on Dialogue Tree, and I just wanted to acknowledge that here. Full disclosure, I guested on Super Switchheads a few weeks ago, but I don't think that's too scandalous a revelation. So, back to David. In addition to being an actor with voiceover experience, he's a gamer with an open-mindedness that I found quite inspiring. He plays a ton of stuff, and his positive outlook on everything he comments on has motivated me to try a load of games that I wouldn't have given a second thought to otherwise. He just felt like the right person to ask to contribute to this episode. But enough from me. Let's hear more from David. David, hi. Thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for providing the voiceover for the interview that we'll be hearing shortly. So, from following your show and your recommendations online, it seems fair to say that you're a fan of puzzle games. I think you might be the biggest Picross fan, in the world.
If I can have one claim to fame, that'll do it.
It's a good one. But I'm not really aware of any history that you have with puzzle platformers. Do you have any history with the genre? Like, do you have any particular favorites from it?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show, and it was a pleasure to do the voiceover for the transcription. That was a fun little project there, and I'm happy to do it anytime. But yeah, I love puzzle games, as you said, and you know, in thinking about this, whenever you told me you wanted to talk, there are a number of puzzle platformers that I would say were kind of integral to my enjoyment of, you know, not only puzzle platformers as kind of a subgenre of the platformer genre, but just it as a whole. I think they're such a huge part of the platforming genre. I think it goes back, maybe one of the earliest ones I can remember was on the TI-83 calculators. Did you ever play Block Dude?
No,
I don't know if you guys had TI-83 calculators where you're from, but it was like a you know, a game that's almost maybe more Sokoban than it is puzzle platformer, but it's like a side-scrolling, you know, you pick up the blocks and move them in order to get to the goals or whatever, and that was, you know, what I would play in class instead of actually listening to the teacher in math class. But Block Dude was a pretty integral game for me early on, I think.
I've never heard of that. We just used to write rude words on our calculators, and you turn them upside down.
Well, we did that too. We did that too.
Okay,
but we also had Block Dude.
Oh, no, we never went further than that.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the many glorious things that America has to offer its students. On top of that, yeah, I kind of wrote down a little bit of a list of some of the puzzle platformers I really enjoy. La Mulana 1 and 2 are excellent puzzle platformers. Big fans of those. Obviously, Limbo and Inside. Both of those were very early games for me that I played where I was like, oh, this is a tricky sort of brainy game that also is very aesthetic and has like a very simple story that is very effective. Obviously, Braid was one of the very early indie puzzle platformers that I really enjoyed. Tokitori, that's another kind of early puzzle platformer that I loved. And then, yeah, you know, it's in first person, but I would say the Portal games, you know, Portal 1 and 2 are wonderful puzzle platformers that also incorporate a wonderful sense of place and story as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the genre.
Were you aware of Nama and their games before I reached out to you to talk about this?
Yes. Yeah, I was. I had, you know, I'd seen ElecHead, I think, in an indie world a long time ago and was immediately struck by the aesthetics and the visuals of it. And just, you know, the simplicity. Yeah, I think games that like are incredibly simple and like have a hook, like all built around one game mechanic, like a lot of Nama's games, or maybe most of Nama's games, really seem to be, are immediately captivating to me. But it was, you know, in the deluge of games that come and go. It's you don't get to play everything, but I'm glad I have now. And Ooh as well. I know earlier this year, Ooh was getting so much praise from people that I really admire and trust.
Yeah, it was getting a lot of praise from other game developers.
Right. Yeah.
Which is really nice to see. What did you think after reading Nama's interview responses? Was there anything that stood out to you?
The main thing that stood out to me was his love of Game Maker. You know, I've myself toyed with the idea of a lot of different game ideas that I've had over the years without much actual programming experience. I don't really come from a programming background, but Game Maker always seemed like such an approachable piece of software in order to kind of jump into it. And I think, you know, reading that was actually really inspiring, on top of not only Nama's interview that I was able to do the transcription of, but also the recent release of UFO 50, which is entirely in Game Maker. You know, Downwell, that's another game that I love, which Nama also brought up. A fabulous game that I've played a ton of. That's also a Game Maker game. And so it's just more fuel to the fire for me to want to actually learn that tool.
I believe that since recording your take on the transcription, you have played ElecHead and Ooh. Cool. So what do you think of them so far?
I mean, I totally get it. Kind of like what I said before. I love the simplicity of both of the games. I love that they share a common language as insofar as like the menus and the way that they're laid out. You know, I love that he's kind of got a visual and you know, design aesthetic that he's sort of worked in, and kind of, it feels very much like it's his own voice, having played both of these games kind of back to back in quick succession for the first time. So that's really cool. I actually started playing OO before I played ElecHead, but yeah, I love them. And I've been playing a lot of the new Pokemon and a few other games here and there that kind of like take a lot of your, you know, audio and visual attention in all these different ways. It's like, oh, you got to like pay attention to the story and listen to the music and make sure you're following the battles. And it's just kind of like, you know, using all your sensory perceptions. And it's nice to play games that are a little bit more stripped back, that, you know, I can like have something on the TV in the background and just like fuck around in this, you know, puzzle simple environment, you know. So I've been really enjoying a break from some of the other games I've been playing to play these games. They're just such a, you know, beautiful little experiences on their own, and tremendously fun, and sometimes quite difficult. When I figure out the puzzles, I feel really good about myself.
Oh yeah, it's a great thing about it. Yeah, it's really nice that it just strips everything down, away from being this like, multi-sensory experience to, but it's still visually and like orally stimulating. And it just, the way it strips it back to these like simple but effective like component parts really like allows you to actually focus on the puzzle. It actually allows you to focus on what the game is asking you to do. Which is one of my favorite things about it.
Right. Yeah, ElecHead in particular, I think I was struck by the binary nature of that game. You know, it's like the surfaces are either on or off. There's only two colors, really, you know, and so it's it really kind of breaks it all down to its core, and there's something very monkey brain about that I've been quite enjoying.
And it's amazing how far it goes. It's amazing how far they can take that one idea.
Yeah, and of course, you know, when the music finally kicks in ElecHead after the first section or whatever, all of a sudden I was super emboldened to continue on with the game. Great stuff.
David, thank you. That's all questions I had for you, and thank you for your time. Now I just wanted to throw to you for you to plug whatever you want to plug.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much. And thanks again for having me on and reaching out about this project. This was very fun. If listeners are interested in hearing more from me, my show, Super Switchheads, I do every week. It's a weekly show. We've been doing it since 2019. We're about 350, 60 or so episodes into the project at this point. We have developers on quite a bit. In fact, the most recent episode we did involved one of the developers of Axes, a very fun puzzle platformer, kind of 3D puzzle platformer. You play as a ball. And then also the developer of Tori Saturn. So that was Ciactro and Spaceline Studios. So we have interviews with developers. We talk about the newest games, and sometimes we just do episodes about water or air. So, you know, we run the gamut on the kind of content that we do on the show. But if you enjoy that, we'd love to have you subscribe to us over on YouTube or listen to us on Apple or Spotify.
Those water and air episodes were great.
We're working our way through the elements.
I can't wait for the next Element show.
Yeah. We started them as bits. I was like, what if we did just an episode on wind, like kind of as a bit? I thought that'd be funny. But then it was like, oh shit, like we actually had to stop the conversation. Like there's more to say than you would think when you go into an episode that's kind of as broad as that. So definitely interesting. I recommend listening to those episodes. I enjoyed those quite a bit.
David, thank you very much for your time.
Of course. Thank you.
My thanks to David, and I'll tell you all about where you can find them online at the end of the show. Now, let's talk to Nama. Part 1. Down the Well. I figured I wanted to live off my passion, so I started by going to a game design school. From the first class I took, I realised how fun it was to make, draw, and program games. In their interview with Asobu Nama Takahashi talks a little about their gaming origin story. They are Japanese, but did not grow up there. Feeling isolated, they turned to games. I asked Nama about their earliest gaming memory, and whether there was a moment in their life at which they became conscious of becoming a gamer.
My earliest gaming memory is actually kind of funny. For my birthday, my parents accidentally bought me Pokemon Blue instead of Pokemon Silver, which was the one that I really wanted at the time. I remember being pretty disappointed at first, but I quickly became hooked. I even used to hide under the covers at night to keep playing until my parents caught me and got mad. The moment I really became conscious of being a gamer was when I played Monster Hunter P2G. At first, it was so difficult that I almost gave up, but little by little, I started to understand the mechanics, got better, and eventually I was able to beat Tigrex, the monster that once terrified me, without any trouble. Meanwhile, my friends who started around the same time still couldn't defeat it, so I ended up helping them out, like some kind of veteran hunter. That was probably the point where I thought, wait, maybe I'm actually good at games, and started to really see myself as a gamer.
I Want to Eat the Sun and Projection Remains were both made for the Tokyo Game Show Awards, and Battloon was made as a school project. Now, I must admit to having never heard of the Tokyo Game Show Awards. What was that experience like? What was the independent game scene in Tokyo like at that time? Have you observed any changes in that scene in the years since?
The Amateur Division of Japan Game Awards is a competition to decide the best student-made games across Japan. Winning an award there was seen as a big advantage for future job hunting, and schools also encouraged students to aim for it because it reflected well on them too. I entered a game college in 2015, and that's when I started making games for the first time. The first year was spent learning the basics: planning, programming, graphics, and in 2016 I participated in the contest for the first time. The competition had a yearly theme, and making use of that theme was considered more important than just raw fun. The theme in 2016 was flow. That's what the idea for ElecHead came from, and it ended up winning the Excellence Award. That gave me a huge boost of confidence. At that time, the indie scene in Japan was still very small. When I started in 2015, hardly any of my friends or teachers even knew what indie games were. I first discovered them almost by chance at an event I attended during my first year to study games. That's when I encountered a game that completely changed my life: Downwell by Moppin. Until then, I thought the only career path was to join a company. I loved every part of making games, but I knew that in a company I'd only get to work on one piece of the process. When I played Downwell, I realized that one person could make something even more fun and polished than big studio games. And it was made by someone close to my age, which was a shock. Seeing its commercial success pushed me to seriously commit to becoming an indie game developer. When I joined the Amateur Division contest the following year, the rule was that you had to participate as a team, as a kind of training for working in a company. But by then, I had already decided that I wasn't going to enter a company, so I was allowed to participate alone as an exception. That's how ElecHead was born. And actually, it was because of Downwell that I started using GameMaker. At the time, I was the only one in my school using it, and even the teachers didn't know how to help me with it. That made things tough, but it also pushed me to figure out things on my own.
Nama's next project was very different: Battloon, a multiplayer party game which they developed in collaboration with Hachino's and worked with a publisher for the first time. I asked Nama how that came about, what the experience was like, and whether they'd taken anything forward from it.
I first got to know Hachino's through Twitter. We followed each other, probably because of our shared interest in GameMaker. Around 2017, I heard rumors at my school that a really skilled developer had transferred in. Curious, I went to introduce myself, and when I saw one of their works, I realized I had seen it before on Twitter. To my surprise, it turned out to be Hachino's. That's how we met in person. During the second half of the year, we had an assignment to work on a team project. The school thought pairing me and Hachino's together would be interesting, so we formed a team. Since it wasn't for a contest, there was no set theme, and honestly, I didn't know what kind of game to make. So we randomly generated words to force a theme, and the words we got were balloon, helmet, and sumo. From there, the programmer quickly made a prototype of a game where balloons tackled each other, which eventually became Battloon. At some point, Hachino's posted a progress video of Battloon on Twitter, and that caught the attention of a publisher. Since Battloon was a party-style competitive game, and the Nintendo Switch had just launched, I think they saw an opportunity. Party games seemed like they were going to sell well. So, even as students, we suddenly found ourselves making a commercial release with a publisher. At first, it felt like a dream come true, but honestly, the development didn't go very smoothly. I was still making games very loosely, deciding specs kind of haphazardly, just assuming things would end up fun, and then forcing it all together into a finished product. Releasing a game on Nintendo Switch as a student was something people praised as amazing, but in terms of gameplay and commercial success, it was a failure. I felt truly sorry to the publisher, and it was a big shock to me. That experience made me determined not to repeat the same mistakes. From then on, I made it a habit to carefully think through every single design choice before moving forward.
Part 2. High Voltage. Battloons is an outlier in Nama's catalogue. It is essentially a couch party game. A well-refined, really nice-looking party game with a clearly defined mechanical idea, but one where that idea doesn't really have the depth, or at least doesn't iterate as carefully and considerately as it does in their solo games. So that brings us to ElecHead. This game was initially created as a prototype for the 2016 Japan Game Awards Amateur Division and won the Excellence Award there. You returned to this prototype after I Want to Eat the Sun and Projection Remains, so you must have felt the idea had something to it. That brings us on to what I feel should be the main topic of any discussion of your work, which will take an idea and expand on it over the course of the game. Do you have any principles for designing and developing the ideas in your games? Do you have a point that you start from?
Battloon was completed and released on Nintendo Switch around 2019, and soon after that, I graduated from game college. While many of my classmates went on to join companies, I chose to stay independent and pursue the path of an indie developer. I struggled with a bit of what to make as my first solo release. I considered new ideas, but since I didn't have much money, I decided it was smarter to build upon something I had already made, so that I could release it more quickly. I looked back at my past projects from the amateur division that had been well received. I Want to Eat the Sun, Projection Remains, ElecHead. I Want to Eat the Sun had only been nominated, not awarded, so I set that aside. Projection Remains was a team project, and it didn't feel right to make a commercial version of it on my own. That left ElecHead, which I decided to fully develop into a commercial release.
大人数で作ってると思ってたんですよ、ゲームを。今までゲームっていうのは。学校でもそうやって教えられたので、これが一人で作られてるんだっていうのが。
When I design mechanics, my approach is actually pretty simple. First, I think about whether a core mechanic can generate at least 10 distinct stages. If I can't come up with enough, I abandon it. Another key factor is surprise. Even if I can design 10 stages, if none of them has a surprising solution, I abandon it as well. I apply the same principle, not just to the core mechanic, but also to related mechanics, like switches or moving platforms.
Something that I found really engaging about ElecHead was the balance of challenge. It was tricky, and I really had to stop and think about some of the puzzles, but it always felt manageable and never frustrating. I asked Nama how they work to achieve that balance. I asked them whether they have playtesters, or whether they are able to gauge that balance on their own.
Balancing difficulty definitely comes down to playtesting. Both ElecHead and Ooh were basically impossible during the very first playtests. Through repeated testing, I added hint stages or sometimes cut out puzzles that were simply too hard. By going through that process again and again, I adjusted things until the games could be cleared without explicit hints while still feeling satisfying. One important thing is to not lower the difficulty too much right from the start. It's tempting to cut anything that feels impossible, but sometimes players surprise you by figuring things out. If I removed all of those moments too early, the game would lose many of its surprises and end up as a more ordinary puzzle game. So I think it's important to trust the players and give them a chance to rise to the challenge.
Part 3. Show, don't tell. Trusting the player and giving them a chance to rise to the challenge. I love that, and I think it's an admirable impulse in game design. It also underlines how balancing challenge is a challenge. It's no accident that ElecHead and Howe feel so well balanced. Nama works on this, and the gradual difficulty curve is as important to the identity of those games as the visual design, the music, or the play mechanics. And so, in talking about challenge, mechanics, and design, there's only one place to go next. That brings us on to your latest game, Howe, which was released on August 8th, 2025. Could you tell us a little about this new game? When did you start work on it, and where did the idea for the game initially come from?
I started developing Howe around August 2023, right after finishing the Switch and Xbox ports of ElecHead. So in total, it took about 2 years to complete. The choice to use bombs as the central mechanic came from regrets I had with ElecHead. Originally, ElecHead began as an attempt to make a Metroidvania. But with puzzles, the problem was that backtracking meant having to solve the same puzzles over and over, and I couldn't solve that design issue. In the end, it became a linear puzzle platformer. There's only a slight Metroidvania-like feel near the finale. For Howe, I wanted to tackle that problem head-on, to make a puzzle platformer with real exploration elements. I considered what kind of core mechanic would fit well with exploration, and I landed on bombs. They're a common mechanic in many exploration games, but they felt like a natural fit for creating a puzzle platformer with both destruction and traversal. That's how Howe came to be.
I think it's a bold and interesting choice to develop a puzzle platformer without a jump, where the mechanics of movement are a big part of the puzzle. I asked Nama what inspired that choice, and how they go about designing a game like it. I asked them, were there any particular challenges that they encountered during development?
If I added a jump button, the need to use bomb blast for jumping would lose its meaning. It would also make things like bomb placement and sequencing less important, which would narrow the design space. On top of that, I felt adding another button just wasn't elegant. The idea of using explosions for jumping and dashing actually goes back to my student days. I once thought about making a kind of bomb soccer game, where you'd set the position and timer of bombs to blast the ball into the goal. I never developed it, but the concept stuck in my head. That might be why I later thought, what if explosions didn't just break things, but also launched the player? The hardest part of development was definitely programming. Handling multiple bombs moving and colliding at once made the code extremely complex. Even now, if I look at that section, it would probably take me a whole day just to re-understand how it works.
In the Asobu Dev interview that I've referenced throughout this episode, Nama spoke about the influence of V on their work. I asked them if they had played anything more recently that they think pushes ideas about game development forward, like they think that game did.
The most influential thing for me recently wasn't actually a digital game, but an ARG, alternate reality game, called Someone's Wallet. In this game, a real wallet is sent to your house, and inside are things like a student ID or receipts. By examining them, you piece together what might have happened to the owner. Of course, it's fictional, but everything inside the wallet feels so real that the immersion is incredible, something I had never experienced in digital games. It made me realize how narrow my perspective had been. I was shocked to see how games can even make use of reality itself. I feel like my understanding of what games could be had been lifted to another dimension.
Part 4. Knowledge Matters. That is a wild idea for a game. The thought of Nama applying his sensibilities to an ARG project is tantalising to say the least. Now, I would love to see what they could come up with. Lastly, I asked Nama about this, about what's next.
将来のことについてこうなんか考えたときに、正直何しようかなってずっと迷ってたんですよね。やっぱその好きなもので生きていきないなと思って。でまずはゲームの。
As for what's next, I can't share specifics yet, but I definitely want to keep pushing the ideas of puzzle-centric design into new directions. I've been thinking a lot about how these principles could apply to genres outside of puzzle platformers. My ambition is to keep surprising players with fresh ideas, while still keeping things simple and approachable. Ultimately, I want to make games that can be understood without words and enjoyed by people of any age, anywhere in the world.
学校でもそうやって教えられたので、これが一人で作られてるんだっていう感動して、
Part 5. Understood without words. My ambition is to keep surprising players with fresh ideas, while still keeping things simple and approachable. Ultimately, I want to make games that can be understood without words and enjoyed by people of any age, anywhere in the world. That is the best and most articulate summation of Nama's work as a whole that I've read or heard anywhere else. And so finally, back to Howe. At the time of writing, Nama's game sits at overwhelmingly positive from over 2,500 reviews on Steam. That does not happen by accident. Howe is an excellent game, a triumph of minimalism, a wonderful example of what is possible within a seemingly limited framework. The visuals are simple throwback pixel art, but where elements of interest are highlighted by bold primary colours. The destructible blue blocks, the bright yellow flies and frogs, and the softly appealing pink of Howe themselves. Like ElecHead, Nama uses colour sparingly but strikingly. It may not be new, but it is itself. The music, by frequent collaborator Tsuyomi, which you've been hearing throughout this episode, is surprisingly jaunty, with a bit of swing to it that you might not expect from the look. It's not your typical retro chiptune stuff. It nestles into the background when needed, just a few little rising bubbles of sound, evocative of the setting. We're inside a bird, after all. And then, in the full area themes, it sounds like the imagined soundtrack to an alien shopping mall, or elevator music from a sci-fi anime. A playful 7-note motif is reproduced in different sound fonts across the soundtrack, communicating both the variety of the environments and a level of consistency in the design. Like the game as a whole, Tsuyomi's work shows that a little can go a long way. And the gameplay, the design of it, does indeed go a long way. For me, Howe's great success is in its gently evolving puzzle design, and the remarkable subtlety with which it teaches you how to solve those puzzles. I don't know how I intuited some of the solutions. It just came naturally. The game, somehow, gives you the intellectual flexibility to adapt to its demands. Every time you are presented with a seemingly impassable challenge, the solution gradually forms from the puzzle pieces of knowledge you have gained to that point. The solution may seem obtuse, but you will get there through logical, creative experimentation. Talking about specific uses of the bombs or environmental interactions would be spoilers for this game, as discovery of those uses effectively is the game. What I think can be said without taking away some of those joys are how I really liked the ways in which you are taught. In the early game, about destructible environments, and in the mid-game, about how to use multiple bombs to effect more complex traversal, and in the late game, how to use momentum to achieve the same. I'll leave it at that. The constant stream of aha moments is Howe's greatest gift to you. This is Nama Takahashi's unique skill, consistent across their work but most evident in ElecHead and Howe. They're somehow able to design games that push back whilst pulling you forward. You are taught, screen by screen, new ways to utilise your limited moveset, new ways to interact with new environmental elements. Those teachings usually coalesce into a finale for that environment, the end of which will prompt you to examine a map and search for a previous area to which you should return to make use of this newly acquired knowledge in order to progress. It communicates a feeling of learning an alien language, a modern version of the Metroidvania vibe. You are lost, but you find your way through knowledge. And it is, like Animal Well, a modern take on the Metroidvania framework. You don't backtrack with an item, poring over a map to find the one pixel that exploits that ability. You explore, with knowledge, in a more natural way than other examples of the genre. Finally, Howe does all this without any words. There is no dialogue, no on-screen text, no linguistic prompts of any kind. Everything is taught to you through visual design. Even the menus in the game are text-free. Every option in the settings is represented by a symbol. Like the game, readable anywhere, by anyone. Scratch that, there is one section of the menu that is written, and that is the list of games that inspired OO. And this is the only bit I'll spoil. Those games are Bomb Chicken, Box Boy, Celeste, Metroid, Yoshi's Island, and V. What does it mean that Nama designs wordless games readable by anyone, anywhere, where the only words in that game are the names of other games? I think it's pretty easy to draw a grand, neat conclusion. This simply underlines how video games are a universal language. We can all learn how to double jump in OO. We can all understand why Yoshi's Island is good. Nama's skill is in designing games that easily fit into the lineage of those great inspirations. Their thoughtfulness is evident in playing their work, and emphasised by their responses in our conversation. A fresh idea, simple and approachable. That's Nama Takahashi on OO. Thanks for listening. And thanks once more to Nama Takahashi and David Howe for making this episode what it is. You can find a link to the newsletter for this episode in the show notes. That newsletter includes all the information you need about Nama and their work, such as interviews, features, links to their other games, and the music used in this episode. It also features links to where you can find David online, from their podcast to their films to their Twitch channel. I strongly encourage you to check it all out. The artwork for Dialogue Tree was produced by Pixel Benny, and you can find the show online at dialoguetree.cc. Talk to you next time.